Hi, and good afternoon again. This is the second webinar of the October webinar series. Uh, and our presenter for today for the second webinar is Karuna Dayal, who's an Atlas Core Fellow, Class 14 from India. And she will be talking about the theme of child marriage under harmful traditional practices. And it's going to be sort of talked about under the context of it as an international sort of harmful practice and its world. What are the causes and implications and policy efforts to mitigate it? But a little about our presenter. As a policy fellow at GARE in Washington, D.C., and she has extensive experience in policy advocacy and good governance projects. GARE, she's engaged in supporting research and analysis around implementation of donor government policies and addressing early forced marriages in Bangladesh and Nepal and contributing to the development of an advocacy strategy to influence key stakeholders at global and national levels. Over to you, Karuna.
Thanks, Eunice. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So as Eunice mentioned, that my presentation today is on harmful traditional practices across the world. And as you see the slide deck in front of you, I'm going to focus on early and forced child marriage. So let's go ahead with it. As you see in the first slide, the picture itself is quite shocking, that you see a young child. I'm sorry about not having a content slide here, but I just wanted to go in a smooth flow with my presentation. So as you see here, I'm talking about this whole photograph which shows you a young a boy and a wrapped up girl, or a bride, I would say, and it shows this kind of emotion that they are in a marriage or a marriageable situation which is not completely under their control, or they are not it shows that they are not fully aware about what is happening. Just a background of it to say that like the picture says, 2 seconds, every 2 seconds a girl under 18 is married, and that is pretty real and is happening around the world as of now. I would just give you a simple background. First of all, child and early marriage has been prevalent across the world in different points in the history and of almost all societies around the globe, including in Europe, United States, the Middle East, and of course from the country I come from, India. India has been one of the highest prevalent countries besides Bangladesh and Nepal. In India, the practice has origins going back to ancient times and persists even today. For more than 140 years, the Indian government and the civil society have sought to curb the practice of child marriage through law. We even had, a child marriage law. We have it even now. The government renewed its efforts in 2006 around this child marriage prevention law, and the country passed Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, which increased the penalties of conducting a child marriage ceremony, made a child marriage voidable by married party up to 2 years after reaching the age of maturity, and provided the opportunity for courts to intervene in the child marriage cases. Well, basically, I'll just go a step back and talk about the age. Why do we call it child marriage, or why do we call it early or forced child marriage rather? So as we all know that there is a certain age of marriage that individuals adhere to or have been culturally informed about. So marriage before the age of 18 is a fundamental violation of human rights, and therefore the age of marriage, which is for girls, that is 18, and for boys is 21, is the right age, they say, and it is written in the law as well. So getting married earlier than that is a complete violation under the human rights laws. I'll just go further ahead and explain to you why child marriage is so prevalent and what is the global pattern of it. So as you see in the slide, that child marriage has been a universal issue in the sense that I just explained that has been occurring since many years and centuries and decades. Everything is so little to in terms of time. So it has been prevalent since time immemorial, and it still prevails, and there are national and local and international forces, like global campaigns and international organizations who are behind the forces and have built movements to combat and end child marriage. I would also share about my experience at CARE while I'm working at CARE to end child marriage, and I'm contributing to the whole cause. I've also been contributing to the Girls Not Brides Coalition, which CARE is co-chair of, and it has been a very meaningful experience to know more about this broader global pattern of adolescent girls and their early and forced child marriage situations. So when we talk about child marriage as a traditional practice, all of these institutions have been working on traditional practices and combating it. But when we come down to the root causes of it, it it just it talks about everything from related to poverty, to education, to lack of accessible resources that young boys and girls have. Specifically looking at the countries and the regions or continents such as South Asia, where more than half of the child brides live. So as you see in the photograph here, there are more than 50% actually, I would say, of child brides who stay in South Asia itself. That's a UNICEF, the 50% quote is a UNICEF quote from a recent report, which tells that South Asia is on high prevalence. So why does it happen? I'll explain each of these points discreetly, and as you see, the first is tradition. So traditionally, child marriage is a practice that in many places happens simply because it has happened for generations, and straying from tradition could mean exclusion from the community. So when we meet and we talk to communities and we work with communities, we get to know of what the mindset has been behind this traditional practice, and it has been a challenge for many around the world to break or crack that nut. But it has been a consistent effort to combat child marriages, and it is moving forward positively. The second is gender roles. In many communities where child marriage is practiced, girls are not valued as much as boys. They are seen as a burden. The challenge will be to change parents' attitudes and emphasize that girls who avoid early marriage and stay in school will likely to be able to make greater contribution to their family and their community in a longer term. So traditional gender roles play a very important part in having prevalence of child marriage till now. Poverty, which is the biggest issue, we somehow now think of it that you name anything and poverty is the first cause. While poverty is acute and giving a daughter in marriage allows parents to reduce family expenses by ensuring they have one less person to feed, clothe, and educate. It takes off that huge burden of not having a girl child in the house. As you may have come to know through so many news sources and working in the development sector, that in specifically developing nations, a lot of our cultures um, think and believe that having a girl is to have to spend more money, and marriage is such an issue that parents start planning from years before she is even born. Um, so just to emphasize on that how communities have been evolved into these traditional gender roles, and that girls and boys are a very important part of it. Fourth is security. By security, I mean that many parents marry off their daughters young because they feel it is in her best interest, often to ensure her safety in areas where girls are at high risk of physical or sexual assault. I would like to give an example here of the Indian scenario specifically, because security is a big issue in the middle and lower middle income groups, because once a girl attains puberty, her parents become overprotective. They are more concerned about getting her married off, um, and they tend to get her married off very early in that pressure, with that pressure of uh, giving her protection or making her secure or making themselves more secure. So with reference to CARE's stats, we we just go through this every time, this huge data and number that we come across, that almost 39,000 girls will become child brides, and they are becoming child brides every single day, often married to much older men. There is this story which was covered by Too Young to Wed. It's an organization which features a lot of photographs, and they display a lot of stories on girls who marry young to older men. There was this recent story about a Afghanistan-based man who was 40 years old, and they had shown that the girl was just 10 or 11 years old, and she was married to this man. And it was a very hard-hitting story, just reflecting on this number, that the number of girls and boys as well who get married so early. I'll be moving to the prevalence of child marriage. Um, well, we know that it is the most harmful practice, and it's almost everywhere in the world. By prevalence here, I mean here is a definition of it, which says that the percentage of women who are between 20 to 24 years and are married or in a union before at the age of 18, is comes under child marriage. So here's just a brief look at the prevalence of child marriage around the world. So I've listed out countries which go from Bangladesh to Burkina Faso, Chad, Ethiopia, India, Ghana, Nepal, Niger, Madagascar, Mali, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Mozambique, Guinea, and Sudan, which are on the high prevalence amongst other countries. So these are the main countries which are listed. 70%, or more than 70% girls in Niger and Bangladesh are married before 18. That's again highlighted here because these are the most prevalent countries, apart from the ones that I spoke about in my previous slides. We'll just do a reality check of what's been happening around the world, and in the next decade, we know that the Millennium Development Goals have been largely been focusing around the empowerment of women and girls, and a lot of international agencies have been looking at what the next decade or the way forward would look like. So just looking at what is there for real, so here is again a number that shows that 14.2 million girls will be married under the age of 18 per year. And again, going 1,000 number of getting married each day. Um, while we know that child marriage happens around the world, we also know that there is a larger challenge in economies and developing countries around the world which are fighting child marriage. Um, and we see it as a huge roadblock towards the development of our local or national or international economies and children, most importantly. Um, there are many laws that have been enforced around the countries, and different policies or schemes by the government have been rolled out at various levels, and by effort of engaging the civil society and the international agencies into combating child marriage and ending child marriage. Recently, we saw the Girls Summit taking place in London, where the Bangladesh Prime Minister was quoted very interestingly in the media. Until now, there has been very less effort, but now after there has been a global call, the countries have been looking forward to taking a fast track mode on implementing policies around child marriage. Although we know that the laws are there since time immemorial, but they are weak and they are enforced very bleakly or not at all. Another photograph here, if you take a close look at that, again, both of them are very young, and the photograph itself shows that the condition of young adolescents, the way they are married around the world. This photograph is from India, and the photograph here talks about 90% of adolescent pregnancies around the world and in developing countries amongst married girls. So just to touch on that part, that there are girls who get married early, and when we see that they are getting married early, which is below the age of 18 years, they are more susceptible to getting pregnant and having difficult pregnancies. So the problem of child marriage and development, just a few more things to go through that. And as we emphasize that girls who marry at the age of 18 are likely to have lower education attainment, and as we see that at the grassroots level, when you meet communities, it's quite evident that most of the girls drop out very early out of school, and there's a lot of peer pressure from their parents, more so because the girl has to be married off early and they don't have enough funds, so the girl lacks that the elementary education or the primary education itself. There are greater chances of experiencing unwanted pregnancies. That's a very important point related to a young girl's health, and which imposes a greater risk of sexual and reproductive health morbidities and maternal mortality. India, by far, is one of the countries which has the highest maternal mortality rates, across regions and across nations. Um, while that is being affected, a girl's health after her marriage really gets her confidence down. Her opportunities to work or access opportunities gets lower. More so, she has lack of focus in being educated further. Just to put it in a nutshell, child marriage undermines global development efforts focused on creating more educated, healthier, and economically stable populations. A look at the international and national efforts or international instruments. We've seen that we've got the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW. A lot of us activists and human rights professionals around the world are focusing a lot on UDHR and CEDAW articles while we work on such cases on violation of, a girl's or a woman's rights. Convention on Consent to Marriage, Minimum Age for Marriage and Registration of Marriage. This is another convention which talks about consent of marriage and the age of marriage, which has been a larger debate in Bangladesh right now after the Girls' Summit in process. If you go through the media reports recently, Bangladesh has been cited again and again and again about lowering the age of marriage. A lot of pressure from the community has been coming around the age issue, the age of consent, and the communities want that the age of marriage should be lowered down to 16 and not 18. So the convention is at stake, and definitely a lot of references are being drawn out of the international discussions and debates going around this. The other is the Convention on Right of Child. The CRC is referred across the globe, and the age of marriage and the right age of marriage or child marriage is addressed under the CRC as well. Protocol on the Rights of Women in Africa to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, also known as the Maputo Protocol, is well referred to for child marriage in the African continent. African Charter on the Rights and the Welfare of the Child is another reference. Inter-American Convention on Human Rights is also another reference. Besides each of these, each country has a specific law. Like in the beginning, I was talking about the Indian Act, which is called the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. Similarly, other countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh and Nepal as well follow their own national laws apart from the international instruments that I just explained. Besides this, I'd also like to talk about the contemporary practice, which has been so rooted in India and has been going through the rigid societal norms and serves to the bolster of long-standing social inequalities and power structures. So child marriage has been having that background, and it has been hard for the civil society and developing nations as a whole to combat it over the years. While there has been this consistent effort by evolving summits and international conferences to put pressure on international policies, there is a larger pressure from the communities who have been practicing this as a tradition, and it's hard to believe, but the law becomes weak automatically in that sense. So I would definitely want to get your questions or any suggestions or any stories that you may have heard about it and would like to talk more about the issue and what you have gathered today. And if you have any doubts about what I spoke about, or if you want to clear out any of your doubts on child marriage and anything on traditional harmful practices, I'd be happy to give you time. I'd just like to thank you for being a part of my presentation, and I'd like to end by this slide saying that traditions are made by people. So we are the ones who can change them. I just changed it a bit because I wanted to make my own, but the original, the quote goes to Graca Machel, the widow of Nelson Mandela. Thank you very much.
Karuna, there are some questions. So if you look at the top left tab, there is a Q&A button. If you click on that, some of the fellows have answered questions. So if you can take like 3-4 minutes, those, that would be great.
Q&A. Yeah, just a moment. Hi. So I think the first question is from Prem, um, saying that legally child marriage is a crime, and under UNCRC it is ratified by many countries. Still, the implementation of these legislation is a big question. What solution do you propose? Well, as a development professional and working in the field currently, in the international policy sector, I completely understand and agree with the question. And while the UNCRC has been ratified in many countries or not ratified in countries, the basic core solution would be to make people aware. I would say that awareness would be the root solution. You know, to implementing these legislations. I hope I was well audible. Eunice, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Karuna, I can hear you.
Okay.
Just like if you can take all the questions at once, that would be great instead of answering them
Okay.
individually. So just like go through
Okay.
the whole list and just like if you can quickly sort of do a summary
Okay.
response, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, John, thank you for that question. So most of you have asked a lot of Medha as well, Grace. Thank you so much for these questions. And while I have less time, and I would like to you know take this discussion further on with you offline as well. But I'd like to briefly talk about the parallel study that John has asked for. You know. So there are various studies, John. So one that I can talk about recently is from the Girls Not Brides. I don't know if you will be able to access Girls Not Brides. That is an international coalition and is operating in many countries. And they have been, you know, uh, uh, webcasting, and they have been publishing a lot of reports from different sources, such as the Thomson Reuters Foundation, CARE ourselves, and as well as the Population Council. Also, Women Deliver, who have recently started working on child marriage. So there is a lot of information available on the choices about young, you know, girls and boys getting married, and what are the data relevant to this. Apart from that, the definition of child marriage to include boys, Medha, that's a very good question. And quickly, I would just say that you know, that I wish it was included in the laws that have been defined by every country. But there is a debate on that as well, and that's why a lot of work around internationally on engaging men and boys. So further to that, yeah, let's see how it you know um, goes ahead. Yes, Grace, I can share that data with you. I can share a report probably later on if any of you want, but Grace, I can share that with you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you
Eunice,
so
can
much,
you hear
Karuna,
me?
for I can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karuna, for taking out the time and preparing this presentation for us. And that's it for now. And as for the fellows, please be sure to fill out your evaluations forms for both the webinars, and you'll be hearing from us next month on the exciting webinars that we have for you then. So this is me, your training manager, signing off, and thank you once again, Karuna, for doing this.
Thank you.
Bye.